There's actually a small mint that started near Philadelphia that has like ½ ounce and 1 ounce silver coins, and it's permissible to use them, except it's a pain in the butt because the merchant has to fill out these forms. All right, so I want to move on from the money power. Actually, I believe it's the 13th Amendment, which reads neither, and this is again something that Congress cannot do. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States. So again, what the Congress was basically prohibited from doing is they couldn't say to anyone that they need to go out and, in servitude, go out and do something for somebody else that wasn't of your own free will. And one of the things actually I believe this applies to is, for instance, like the military draft. Like when our country was attacked after Pearl Harbor, people enlisted pretty much in droves. They didn't really have to, like people realized that the country was they did have a draft, but they realized that, our country is worth defending and we were just attacked by the Japanese, therefore they enlisted of their own free accord. So it's things like that. Obviously, Vietnam was kind of like the exact opposite. There was a lot of reluctance, would probably be some of our presidents were reluctant to serve in the armed forces at that time as well. And so again, what Congress is not allowed to do is, say to you or you have to go do this. It's not supposed to be a country on slavery. Of course, it actually applied to slaves as well. All right. Actually, I wanted to quick cover. I want to take I might not be able to get through everything, but does everyone here know how to do a constitutional amendment?
It takes 75% of the states after they get it ratified through Congress, and it takes like 75% of the states.
You pretty much got it. Any member of Congress. So again, like. Any member of Congress can suggest an amendment, and actually there's been many amendments actually proposed. All you literally do is write it on a piece of paper and submit it in. You have to get it to House floor vote, but the House and the Senate both need to approve it by a 2/3 majority, and then actually, like the gentleman said, it needs to go out to the states, and actually 2/3 of the several states. But when they vote, they actually vote as states. So they don't vote like, Pennsylvania has 17 representatives, or South Dakota has 1 or 2. Each state would actually have its own one vote. So the 17 people from Pennsylvania would decide, our vote is for or against, and South Dakota would be able to decide for or against.
So wouldn't that be after they at least come back home and ask the state people, or do the people get a direct vote to their own legislatures to let them know?
Yes, and what Article 5 also brings up, and I don't believe it's actually ever occurred, is they can also create, by the same voting process, a convention, just like the Constitutional Convention, because our country, obviously, after the Revolutionary War, we were under the Articles of Confederation, which had very strong states' rights for quite some time, and they called a convention to address this. So they figured we need to make this in this sense a living document, in that it can be amended by each future generation. And you're absolutely correct that it needs to be ratified by 3/4 of the states, or by conventions in 3/4 of the states.
Is there anything in there about repealing one? How they repeal it? How does Congress repeal one?
It's the same process. It's the same process. Like
so
the process is like, for instance, prohibition.
Right.
I forget which numbers they were, but it was actually they tried prohibiting alcohol, and you had Al Capone and all these speakeasies and all this crime grow up, and everybody got sick of the crime and said, oh, maybe this wasn't a good idea. So then they removed it. And that's actually a good example, because, again, back to the criminal and tort law that I referred to earlier, again, like, for instance, you could actually look at marijuana legislation. The federal act, it's an act of Congress. They said, you're not allowed, and it's also like cocaine and crack and everything too. And again, all that was supposed to be, you either do it by a constitutional amendment, or you just leave it to the states and let the states kind of deal with it, because obviously, you know, I think in California, for instance, they actually have a referendum coming up on specifically marijuana. So, again, that's the whole thing about criminal and tort law. Unless you amend the Constitution, it's left to the states.
I want to see the states.
Getting rid of the amendment means proposing a new amendment that negates the old one.
Yeah.
And maybe adds other things.
Can't the states take a revote and start saying, no, we don't want it, and then, you know, when you get 3/4 of the states, it's no good anymore?
Well, that's how the ratification process works.
Right. Yeah, but I'm talking about, let's say the governor of Pennsylvania decided that he didn't like the 16th Amendment.
Yeah.
And he says to the people of Pennsylvania, let's take a vote and see who likes the 16th Amendment. And 75% of the people said, we want it out of here. Then he goes to Congress and says, our state doesn't want it. And sort of get a snowball effect going around.
Right, and the way that I'm reading Article 5 in the Constitution is that there's kind of two ways to go about it. Either Congress has a 2/3 majority to move it on to the ratification process, or 2/3 of the states create the same thing. So if 2/3 of the states support it, then I actually have to double check to see whether it went to Congress again, or if they just had to get the other, 10% of the states to sign on before.
I know there's a big 10th Amendment movement right now.
Oh yeah, we're going to get to that. So,
Just a footnote,
Sure.
do you really think the people would sit by and let them even open it up with how unaccountable they've been? I wouldn't want them to touch it, leave it the way it is.
oh yeah, I'm just saying that that's how the Constitution was written, because part of the problem is a lot of the senators and representatives don't really, they don't really respect the Constitution right now anyway.
Right, well, you give them
So-
that opportunity, there will be nothing.
So I would agree with that right now, but again, what the founders kind of had in mind was to have something out there that could be edited. Congress actually, I'm not going to go into this other, just quickly say it, but actually the House of Representatives in particular was actually given the ability with the Electoral College and the vote when they select a president, that they would actually also have a vote to decide if there was a tie or no one got a clear majority. And again, each state would vote as one. Here's a funny one. The payrolls, no law, this was the last amendment to the Constitution, so I believe it's the 27th. No law varying the compensation for the services of the senators and representatives shall take effect until an election of representatives shall intervene. So what they put in place is, okay, if Congress wants to vote itself a pay raise, then there needs to be an election in between, because if the guys voted for the pay raise, then you give the people the ability to vote them out. Like, if they try to give themselves like a 50% raise or what have you. Congress has subverted this by saying, oh, we'll just tie it to the inflation number that we create, so we'll get a 3% raise when everybody in the United States does not. And again, what's the salary of a congressman is actually $174,000. I, of course, am not taking that. I'm only taking the median household income. But to put things in perspective, the average private sector salary from the USA Today is $40,000. The average salary of a government worker is $70,000. And 19% of all federal employees make over $100,000. And, say what you will about government, there may be some jobs where that level of pay may be warranted, but they're non-value added. The job that they perform, they don't create well.
And the federal government is bigger than the 30